Hello and welcome to the CNBC TV 18 Investment Guide. It's Wednesday. It's your date with us as we bring you some more interesting investing lessons from the masters from the market. I'm Surabhi Upadhyay and with me as always is Anuj Singhal. Now Anuj, I think everybody's now in consensus that yes, this is indeed a new bull market that started, right? So I guess the question that people are asking is that if you have to look beyond the obvious nifty stocks and get into mid caps, where does one even begin?
Oh, absolutely. And Surabhi, not for, I think I'm with the consensus view that this is a new bull market. And I think in the mid caps in particular, the one reason where, there's a reason to be bullish is because it's a bull market after a 3-year hiatus. The mid cap bull market peaked out in 2017, end of 2017, and then 2018, 2019, and first half of 2020 is when we had a painful bear market. COVID was not even a reason for mid-cap bear market. That had started even much earlier.
Much before COVID.
Yes, COVID was the reason for the large-cap bear market.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we saw that bounce back. So, if you compare, for example, the price-to-book value for mid-cap index, or if you look at some of the big stocks in price-to-earnings wise and compare them to 2017, even despite the last 6-month rally, a lot of people make the mistake of looking at March as a starting point, which was an aberration. March was not a real price. You should not look at March. So that way, I think there's a lot of value, and of course, that's something that we're discussing. So let's start the CNBC TV 18 Investment Guide. Our guest today is Basant Maheshwari, author and portfolio manager, who has, of course, outperformed the market over the last 4 or 5 years. So perhaps good time to ask him what's the view from here. Basant, thanks a lot for joining us. Now, do you believe this is indeed a long-term bull market, and is it time to perhaps broaden the portfolio, get into mid caps, get into small caps, perhaps take some risk?
Good afternoon, Anuj. The initial hope in April last year was this would be one of the biggest bull markets we'd ever seen. Hope has turned to belief, because obviously you might be the smartest kid in town, but unless the screen shows you the price, all your theories go for a toss. So now you would say, what makes you think that it's a new bull market? What's changed so much? Every bull market needs a lot of cash to be put after stocks. So if you go on a Sunday afternoon to buy vegetables from your local market with 1 lakh rupees in your pocket, you're going to bid up the prices of potatoes and tomatoes and onions and everything. So similarly, people have a lot of cash. The cash has come from the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve in some way has become the savior of the markets, the Jesus Christ for the capitalists, if you might call it. So I think that's how it goes. And Anuj, I'll just take 1 more minute and explain to you how this happens. So when liquidity is printed, the money is scared, it's nervous, it's frightened, it's curious, it doesn't know what to do. So the money first goes and chases gold. That's the purest form of alternate currency. So first we saw a rally in gold stocks, and then we had a rally in the NBFC names, for example, where, not the NBFC names that way, but the second part was when the rally spilled over to, say, the pharma names and the IT stocks, then the banks got capitalized. So the banks had money, banks didn't know what to do. So banks obviously went and lent, and then started the commodity boom, because once banks start to lend, the entire economic cycle starts. So it's a sequence of events that happened, and I think right now the money that has been printed is now kind of restarting the global economic setup.
Okay, so you're sounding very convinced, Basant. Great to have you on the show, by the way. Thank you for joining in. You are sounding very convinced. So let's then also talk about where to begin and how to begin. I think one thing that people grapple with is, should I pick the right sector first? Then within sectors, this big theory about the big getting bigger. One keeps hearing this phrase. So then if I'm going to stick to the bigger stocks, should I even look at the tier 2, tier 3 stocks in that sector or not? So help us decipher some of this.
Surabhi, the line got disconnected. I couldn't hear the last part of your question, if you might.
Basant, I was simply asking that since you're sounding fully convinced about the bull market, tell us how to start when we want to select a mid-cap stock in an environment where people keep saying that it's going to be big getting bigger. Then how do you enter the mid-cap market? How do you start with the sector selection, company selection? Where do you begin?
So mid-caps, there are 2 types of mid-caps. First is a dominant sector leader mid-cap, like we had maybe Page Industries several years back, or you had an SRF for that matter. Those are different ways to look at a mid-cap. You look at a dominant market share, you look at market leadership, you look at a return on equity and things like that. if you're playing for an economic cycle, then you buy what I call the dirty mid caps, where the company is not the most efficient. So if you're buying, for example, a steel company, and steel is coming out of a down cycle into an up cycle, the best and the most efficient producer won't give you the maximum returns. The maximum returns will be made from companies that are reporting EBITDA losses and would, after the recovery starts, convert those losses into profits. So it's just a way of how you look at mid caps and which part of a cycle you are in. So, I mean, the jargon would go, you look at the best of managements and you look at the best of companies, the most efficient ones. But if you're looking at commodity cyclicals, if you're looking at cyclicals, if you're looking at industrials, then the B grade and the C grade names would make more money for you. But then those come with the risks of you have to get rid of them. So your entry has to be right and your exit has to be right. So if you bought a commodity cyclical, then how do you time your exit? You time your exit when your commodity cyclical shows you a return on equity of 30% or 40%, when the EBITDA margins are at their maximum, when the street is reporting the best of numbers. But if you are looking at a classic mid cap, the traditional ways in which long-term investing is made naturally, then you would obviously go for companies that are leaders of their market share, that are leaders of their segment and are dominating the area. So that two things split in between, and it depends on what you're looking at.
Okay, so Basant, let's then talk about the themes that you are bullish on currently. What are you betting on right now?
So Anuj, if you just see our markets, we might say that the Nifty is at 14,500, at 15,000, whatever. But what has been leading the markets? IT Pharma, they've got nothing to do with India basically. They are Indian companies with US operations and European operations. What has been leading are the global metals, you know, the steel and the zinc and the aluminum and the copper names. So again, they are a China resultant play. What has been leading the markets are the large 4 or 5 banks which have hit all-time highs. The other banking names are still 40 to 60% below all-time high names, below all-time high prices. So if you just dissect this, you would understand that this is not actually an India recovery story as much as it is a global recovery story. So for example, there's a company called Tesla. Everybody knows about it. And 75 million cars being sold globally, people say. And over the next 5, 7, 8 years, you would have 40% to 45% of them going electric. Is there a way to play Tesla in India? There is a way. So these are the names you would have to see, because when growth starts, they start at a scorching pace. Because when radio was invented in the 20s, or television was invented in the 20s, or the airplane came through, or internet came in the 1990s, they did not grow at 15, 20%. They grew at 35, 40, 45%. So you have to look at names that are actually changing the trajectory in the United States. In India also, you have a lot of digital plays which will be a direct beneficiary if industrial recovery happens. So if you are selling industrial goods on the internet, are you selling them? If you are selling them, then you have to look at alternatives to play that game. So I think the broad theme is borrow from the West, but you know, like what we normally do, just reimpose it and superimpose it on the Indian context.
Okay, you've given us lots of food for thought, and I want to drill a little deeper, also talk about the type of companies. Now, in digital as well, and I think you own some of those plays, the worry is, has it run up too much? That's the digital piece. Then if I talk about the cyclical piece, a lot of people want to now get into economy-facing stocks, you know, whether it's construction companies, cement companies, etc. So how does one go about the stock selection there? Does the management quality come first? Does ROE come first? Does a deleveraged balance sheet? What filters and parameters are most important to you?
So the first thing, Surabhi, is the ROE. But then ROE by itself means nothing. So ROE is like you got a Ferrari, and the growth is the petrol. So a Ferrari without petrol is as good as it looks. It's no better than that. And if you've got just growth without ROE, which is a petrol without a Ferrari, sooner or later it's going to burst on your face. So ROE has to come with growth. Otherwise you get an Hindustan Unilever which doesn't move for 10 years. Deleveraging balance sheet is normally, I mean, we celebrate it, but then the first question to ask is why did they leverage it in the first place? So that's good for commodity cyclicals if you're looking for them. In the mid-cap space, if you look at it, the current ratios are not that important as they would be in large cap spaces, and I will tell you why. Because mid caps by nature work on very small bases. It's like Yusuf Pathan having a great 2 hours on a Saturday afternoon, and he changes the game right throughout because he starts from a low base. He's got nothing to lose. So mid-cap names, normally you would say it's trading at a PE of 40 or a PE of 50 or a PE of 60. But the PE of 60 in a mid-cap name can very quickly come down to a PE of 20. Whereas for a super large cap, a PE of 60 cannot come down to a PE of 20. A PE of 60 in a super large cap can only come down to a PE of 50. So that's the way to actually dissect between a mid-cap and a small cap and a large cap. Because a large cap that looks expensive is normally expensive. A mid cap that apparently looks expensive can become cheap over the next 3, 4, 5 quarters. So there are different ways of looking at things, but broadly, I mean, return on equity and growth. And if you don't buy growth in a bull market, when would you buy growth? So free cash flow, defensive names, moat, business models, they're fantastic ways to generate long-term capital. But if there is a bull market around, people don't care. Even a Unitech went up 500x with the worst of managements and a very broken business model. But that's how bull markets are supposed to be. And if you made the money, you've made the money. You can't be complaining that I made a money out of Unitech, I did not make it out of a DLF. So I don't think that's too much of a chatter right now.
Last few weeks, we've been really focusing on the mid-cap space because that's where perhaps a big bull market has started, and that's where the next round of opportunity lies. And we are in conversation with Basant Maheshwari. Now, Basant, every bull market throws a new sort of star segment, right? In the last bull market was the specialty chemicals. We've seen, for example, PLI stocks do really well. Digital stocks have done well. What kind of new mid-cap stars do you think this bull market could throw up, if any?
Anuj, normally mid-caps do well when they are new to the game. They are the only players to it. So you would have to look at the IPO segment very clearly and very closely, because the PE guys wait for a bull market just like the Indian farmer waits for the rain gods to shower up. So when there is a bull market coming, you're going to get a lot of interesting names in the IPO market, in the IPO place, and that's the only way where you will get some of these niche players, the dominant players. So what would happen is when a company comes up with an IPO, many would say it's not making profits, the PE is high. But then same theory with a mid cap, the base is so small that if you have a 3-year view, the entire game changes. And then also you would have to look at the IPO market with the context of whether any such business model has survived and done well in the West. So if there is a business model that has done very well in the West, you better not ignore the IPOs that are coming through. Of course, they would be expensive, but that's how bull markets are supposed to be. The expensive becomes more expensive.
But then, let me try and throw in a counter over there, because that's exactly the point, right? You don't also want to be the person ending up holding the can. I'm not saying that every private equity exit means that for the listed shareholders. But generally, I mean, Basant, the point is, how do you ensure that you don't end up in traps? So in recent listings that we've seen, some of them from the consumer space and other spaces, when prices went up some, 100%, 200% in a matter of days. And that does at times sound a little worrisome.
So the problems will be is if you are buying the second grade or the third grade or the fourth grade equivalent to the leader of the segment, then obviously there's a problem. But if the leader itself is coming to you, it will always be expensive, just like all leaders are supposed to be expensive. Then you have to take that bet. And of course, there's no sure way of saying that there won't be a problem, but you have to buy those names because those are the places which are going to be bid astronomically upwards. And I think globally there's an IPO rush right now. So even in US, if you see, they're coming out with an IPO every second month with peculiar things like DNA sequencing, and of course EV is there as a broad theme out there. So I think that's the way to look for. But then obviously if you were trying to buy something which is cheaper of the same business, and it's cheaper because it's got a smaller market, it's growing at a smaller pace, or the management is questionable, then the chances of losing is obviously more in a cheaper stock, contrary to popular belief.
Okay, so now Basant, tell us some anecdotes, some stories about some of your investments, and what did you learn from them? Just some interesting anecdotes, perhaps.
One thing which I can tell you is like We had this company called Bajaj Finance, did phenomenally well for us from 2015-16 onwards. And last year, of course, when we were looking for these beaten down names in the commodity cyclical space and in the economy recovery places, money is finite, opportunity is infinite. So we got rid of it. So it was a great journey. Stock went up about 6x for us from the bottom to the top and in between. But then what we learned was making 6x with so much of volatility is not as cool as making 4x with a little less standard deviation. Of course, that's a mathematical term, but then sometimes the returns don't tell you as much of the effort as it was required to make them. So you make, say, at 40x in a consumer company and the money comes easily to you. It's like you're standing at first slip and the ball just comes into your lap. And if you're making 6x in a NBFC, in a financial or in a commodity cyclical, then it's like diving full length and taking up a catch and still the umpire saying it was a no ball. So I think what we learned was sometimes it's better to let go of a little bit of a return if you want a little bit stability in your entire portfolio. So that's how it went.
I guess every bull market teaches us something or the other, right? So now you don't want to be the hotshot maverick fielder. You'll go with a little more of the stability. But that's an amazing story, right? You bought in at 800 rupees on Bajaj Finance and rode all the way. So just to come back to to sum it all up, and now Basant, I know you won't talk stocks, but you're picking stocks on the digital side, which is the cutting edge future, and also on the cyclical side, I mean, metal producers, so wide ends of the spectrum. So again, tell us, how are you sort of summing it up, and how would you, what's your final advice to our viewers then?
So actually, I'm dying to tell you the stock name, but I know what happens after that. So in the digital space, I can't be more eloquent as I am being right now. There are companies that would benefit if there is an industrial recovery happening in India. In the EV, in the auto space, there are companies that would benefit if electric vehicles becomes more of a norm. In the commodity cyclical space, if you see, it's China. So what is China and what is so special about China? If you see, Chinese, they don't give free money. They will first make you struggle and work for a steel plant. They'll make the steel and then they'll put people and set up roads, bridges, flyovers and new townships, whether they need them or they don't need them. So the Chinese stimulus program is a function of their metal consumption. So China produces 52% of global steel right now. So China cannot stop the steel production no matter what people say, because people would be out on the streets protesting. So you have to play these 3-4 themes separately instead of playing just one or two theme. And that's the way to look at it. And one of the biggest companies in India is desperately trying to delist its stock. So what bigger signal did you want from anybody than the biggest producer of a metal company in India saying that I want to delist my stock? That was the signal for you to say that the entire segment, the metal segment, the global metal segment is on a recovery mode. So you have to look at silent cues like that and then take it on.
Except that he just missed the trick by just being a bit too cute, right? Basant could have easily been done, but of course that's a different story. We've seen the stock price now, of course, since then has from the bottom it's doubled, and a lot of people believe that metal cycle is well and truly intact. So that clearly is one cycle that Basant is betting on. Basant, thanks a lot. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, you said something, Basant, we could not hear.
As Australia and China keep fighting, it's good for us. No, what I'm saying is, as long as Australia and China keep fighting, it's good for us. Australia is not sending its coking coal to China. The coking coal prices are down because it's not sending it to China. The inputs that steel plants use, that's coking coal, that's down. Iron ore is going through the roof because China is buying is buying Australian iron ore. And there are stories in Australia where people are leaving their high school teacher jobs and driving trucks in the Western Australian iron ore mines of Rio Tinto and BHP. So it's something like the gold mining rush. You might say that someday it will stop, but any stock in the stock market, you say someday it's going to stop. It will stop someday. Someday we'll all lose money. Yeah. But as long as we make more than what we lose, I think we are fine.
Yeah.